Welcome to the Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. I'm Kelsey Frenkiel, Director of the Sustainability Program at the GBTA Foundation, and I'll be your host for today's episode of the Carbon Compass, a special sub-series of the Business of Travel podcast, focused on sustainability and planet-related conversations. Together, we will explore, discuss, and demystify the world of sustainability in business travel. The Carbon Compass would not be possible without the support of the GBTA Foundation Sustainability Partners. So today we're going to be talking about the GBTA Sustainable Procurement Standards. I'm joined today by Townsend Bailey and Albena Taseva, who are going to help us understand the standards and how to use them. But before we get into all of that, can I have each of you introduce yourselves and explain your role as part of the Sustainability Leadership Council and the Sustainability Committee? And maybe I'll have Townsend go first.
Hi, Kelsey. It's great to be here with you today. Hi, everybody. I'm Townsend Bailey. I'm Head of Corporate Responsibility for the Americas region at IHG Hotels and Resorts. And I get to serve on the Sustainability Leadership Council at the GBTA Foundation. And what we do on the Leadership Council is we help set the overall direction for the GBTA's foundation's sustainability initiatives, providing both a buy side and a supply side sounding board for capacity building, harmonization, and advocacy efforts.
Awesome. Great to have you. Thanks, Townsend. And Albena, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, hello, everyone. And thank you, Kelsey and GBTA, for this opportunity to be part of this conversation today. My name is Albena Taseva, and I'm managing the global travel program for WSAudiology out of Denmark in Europe. In addition, I'm a volunteer for the GBTA Sustainability Committee, where I'm currently part of the committee leadership as Vice Chair for Europe. And for those of you who may be less familiar with what GBTA Sustainability Committee is, we are actually part of the GBTA Volunteer Subject Matter Experts Organization. And our primary aim is developing projects and tools to support the membership in building sustainable travel programs and fostering strong client-supplier relations.
Thank you, Albena. So to give some background on what we're discussing today, we released the Sustainable Procurement Standards for Aviation back in March. And if you missed that release, you can find a webinar all about that on our YouTube channel. And there's also more information in a press release that you can find at gbta.org. And now we're looking forward to release the Global Sustainable Procurement Standards for Accommodations in June, which is coming up. So you were both involved in the Sustainable Procurement Standards from almost the beginning. Albena, can you provide some background into what was happening that stimulated the committee and the foundation's work on this project?
Absolutely. Well, it all started with a post on the GBTA Hub more than a year ago. So a member was asking whether someone had a sustainability scorecard available that he or she was willing to share. And back in the time, our peers from Shell stepped up and offered to provide their air and hotel sustainability scoring levels. And as you can imagine, this sparked vivid peer-to-peer discussion. The topic went viral, if we should say it like this. And then from those conversations emerged a strong need for having a structured guidance on how to evaluate the sustainability profile of travel suppliers. This already had caught GBTA's Foundation's attention, who recognized the needs and cooperated with the GBTA Sustainability Committee, together deciding to focus on developing such resources for the membership. Originally, actually, the idea was to create a scorecard for evaluating accommodation suppliers' sustainability profile only. But relatively quickly, it became clear, well, first, the scorecard wasn't viable until the exact right questions and sustainability parameters were in place. And second, this request from only having accommodation in scope extended beyond to other verticals, as travel buyers were experiencing similar challenges there as well. So these were the humble beginnings from which we have gone a long way. And the sustainability procurement standards are now being developed across aviation and launch there as well. And accommodation and ground transportation are coming soon.
Thank you, Albena. And just to go back to kind of what is the main problem that we're trying to solve. So you're a buyer. From your perspective, what is the main challenge for travel buyers when it comes to sustainable procurement?
Well, the challenges are many and obviously vary strongly from organization to organization and from buyer to buyer. But for me, a couple of topics stand out. In the first place, a clear definition and understanding what really sustainable travel procurement is and how does it fit within the broader general procurement practice in the organization. Secondly, there is still a lot of insufficient and in some cases even lacking expertise when it comes to travel sustainability, not necessarily sustainability, but travel sustainability. And this is valid also both for travel buyers, but equally for their colleagues from the sustainability department. And one of the last things that I wanted to share with you in this instance is the lack of harmonization and standards when it comes to evaluating travel suppliers' sustainability efforts and profiles. And that basically goes across all verticals in the travel ecosystem.
Awesome. And as you said, this can impact all suppliers across the travel ecosystem. So let's talk about that other side of the procurement coin. Townsend, can you provide some insight into how the lack of harmonized standards, as Albena mentioned, impacts suppliers?
Sure. And when I think, when you think about the lack of harmonization, I think it's also important to remember that we're actually, as a business travel sector, we're really starting from a point of strength in that the buyers and many of the suppliers have similar goals. Many IHG, we've got a science-based target approved commitment on climate change, and many of our biggest key accounts have a similar target to address climate change. And so as an industry, we're starting from a point of shared values and shared goals across our commitments. The challenge comes in the nuances of those goals and how we achieve them and what types of information we need to demonstrate progress as well. So for example, you might have 3 buyers that are all committed to addressing climate change, and they might be asking hotels who are also committed to addressing climate change for information about their actions to address climate change in 3 completely different ways. One might ask about the hotel's carbon emissions, one might ask about how much energy they use, and one might ask about what types of technology the hotel has implemented to reduce their energy use. And all 3 of those are trying to get to the same point of how do we demonstrate that we're all going in the same direction to address climate change. But by having diverse questions, different questions, multitudes of questions, it creates significant work that actually, in responding to the questions, that can distract from actually driving progress in addressing climate change and stewarding the environment or creating more equitable and inclusive systems that we're all committed to as well. And so that's one of the biggest challenges that we see is like how do we take our shared commitments and create an exchange of information that can help us efficiently get to what we really need to know to help drive shared action and progress against these topics.
I love that concept of shared value. And we're seeing more and more of this, right? So in GBTA's recent climate action survey, we saw that more than 50% of buyers are planning to integrate sustainability questions into their RFPs, which is ultimately a really positive thing, right? But what we're also seeing is only 30% of those are actually selecting suppliers based on that sustainability criteria. So I want to address, some of what we heard from suppliers when we started this project was a little bit of skepticism, right? So questioning how travel buyers were actually using this information, whether this was just a check the box exercise. So speaking on behalf of the hotel sector, Townsend, is this skepticism real? And how do we move past this?
Well, I can't necessarily speak on behalf of the whole hotel sector, but I can affirm this is a really important topic to discuss. Because as a supplier, we always want to know how the data is being used. And for a really good reason too, because it helps us make sure that we're focused on what's most important for our customers. And I don't know if skepticism is the right word there. When I think about our hotels and across the value chain, I know that hotels are making real investments to be more sustainable, and they're proud of the work they're doing, and that a lot of work goes into collecting that data to respond to these sometimes extensive RFPs. And so, not knowing how that data is used year after year can be frustrating for those hotels. But that said, it is sending a clear signal across the board. We know that this is the direction that our customers are going and that industry as a whole is going. And so it helps make sure that we're on board. And even that 34% figure you cited about only 34% of buyers plan to use these criteria in their decision making, I actually think that's a great start. I can't think of a good solid business that's going to say, you know what, we're going to disregard what 34% of our customers think is important as well too. So that really helps give a great start in terms of building alignment, building momentum across the whole value chain. And ultimately, we know that it's not a matter of if this is going to impact our customers' decision making. It's more a question of when will it impact their decision and how. And that can take place in so many different ways, whether it's in carbon budgets or preference or actually just outright winning the business. But there's a lot of different ways it can take place. And so we're excited to be part of that conversation, figure out how does that happen, and making sure that our hotels are ready and responding to it too. And so these the sustainability procurement standards will really help, I think, align buyers around what's most important and help align suppliers around what's important for those buyers so that we can be more impactful in our sustainability journey.
Exactly. And I think, when we started this process, we did realize there are other use cases for this information beyond just making a procurement decision. It's amazing that 34% of buyers are actually able to make decisions based on that information, but there's actually other use cases. And I'm wondering, Albena, if you can speak to some of the ways that you would use your supplier's sustainability information beyond just making a procurement decision.
Yeah, absolutely. First, for the context, I would like to share a couple of words of what my company is doing and where we are, what kind of travel program we have. So basically, we have a global program, but we are relatively at the beginning of our sustainable procurement, but also sustainable travel procurement journey. And in this regard, and considering that also I recently joined WSAudiology, the sustainable procurement criteria and standards are an absolute meaningful tool to use when I start the dialogue with my sustainability colleagues, but equally with the global procurement and even the executive leadership. It is something tangible to understand what are our commitments and goals in Scope 3 space and the business travel in particular, and how utilizing such resources as the sustainable procurement standards could help us achieving those goals, and how our journey towards achieving this could look like. On the other hand, I have also the opportunity to pilot the sustainable procurement standards as part of my recurrent dialogue with travel suppliers, basically incorporating them as part of the supplier relationship management efforts that we are doing. And then last but absolutely not least, include them in the procurement and travel sustainability pipeline for going forward, because that's a journey. It's not a one single action that is taken here and now. So definitely I will use them maybe slightly different compared to some of my peers, but that's absolutely okay. I think my message here is that the sustainable procurement standards are literally for everyone in the industry, especially on the buyer side. You should not be worried whether your program is big enough or your company is small enough or very structured or very advanced in your journey on sustainability and travel. You really can be creative in how you use them.
And so I think the point you made about supplier relationship management is really interesting. So you're saying you're going to use these questions not just in your RFP, but in your evaluations of existing suppliers and just your ongoing communications with those suppliers you've already contracted.
Yeah, well, my first step right now and right here will be to incorporate them as part of the supplier relationship management program. And why so? Well, first, to get the suppliers a little bit familiar with them. I mean, this is a new resource that just came out on the market in the industry. And also get this ongoing discussion and dialogue with them. Where are they? How are they evolving into their actions, into their pipeline, into their achievements on sustainability, but equally on their product offering. So I would take it as an initial, let's say, check where we are on this journey, and then this will be also something that, if not immediately, going forward, it will be factored somehow into the decision making, into which suppliers we make preferred and which maybe we don't incorporate as part of our corporate accommodation program or airline program. And then when the time comes for the RFP, then we can actually utilize them to a much broader number of vendors. Because obviously an RFP is not only including your current suppliers, but also others that potentially you're interested in, and across locations as well. It will be also, in my case, it will be also very interesting to test it across different geographies and see whether maybe vendors from Europe or Americas or any other region for that sake, maybe uptake those standards in a slightly different way compared to their respective counterparts in other parts of the world. And this could also be something strategically to work on going forward, to see how we can create this demand signal and push it and vocalize it that we're serious about it and it's part of our procurement decision-making matrix.
Awesome. So let's take a step back then and just make sure we're explaining exactly what this product is. So Albena, what are the GBTA sustainable procurement standards and how does it help with the challenges we've discussed?
Well, very simply put, the sustainable procurement standards are an open source library of sustainability questions that support the selection and the assessment of business travel suppliers. And when we say library of sustainability questions, I think here it's very important to say that those questions tackle both the planet, but equally the people part of sustainability. How they help us with the challenges we have discussed? Well, they try, and the aim with which they are born by design is to harmonize and to standardize those sustainability parameters, which are critical and very important for travel buyers, but equally for travel suppliers to know about and to be measured upon, and also to share progress on. So they help definitely with harmonization, with standardization. And then afterwards, they send a strong demand signal that sustainability is here to stay, that sustainability is now not, only about CO2 reporting, which obviously is very important as well, but it's also slowly but surely becomes indispensable part of the procurement process, and more companies are looking into how to implement and drive sustainable procurement practices, where travel could be a good category to pilot things because now we have this standardized and harmonized resource. So from that perspective, they help. And they can be also used internally as an amazing training tool. If we think about what I said at the beginning, that one of the challenges that I see is insufficient knowledge, and to a certain extent, even lacking of knowledge, what travel sustainability is. So bringing this tool could bridge some great conversations with our sustainability departments, but equally the the global procurement organizations.
Thanks so much. And Townsend, you were one of the many hotel representatives that reviewed the standards. Can you talk a little bit about what went into the creation of this?
Sure. It was an 18-month long collaborative process. And, I think the fact that we were all starting from shared values and that we wanted to figure out real solutions made it a very fruitful and collaborative effort as well, too. And so it involved the GBTA Foundation, the GBTA Sustainability Committee, travel buyers, suppliers like IHG, standard setters, and industry experts across the board as well, too. And it really started with the commonly used RFP and supplier evaluation questions, and we compared those against existing frameworks. And as we did this, we were looking at really two specific factors. First, is this actually going to impact a decision for buyers? And will it drive real positive impact as well? We wanted to distinguish between what's a nice to have, nice to know, and what's actually going to drive decisions, what's actually going to drive real positive impact. And by taking this lens, it helped us cut down on the number of questions, but also make sure that the questions we had were really going to be high quality questions that could help really send a signal on what suppliers should focus on and the topics that are the most important for the industry and for our customers as well, too. And also, I should also mention that the standards were reviewed and signed off on by the GBTA RFP task force as well, which means that the people and planet questions in the GBTA RFP catalog will eventually be identical to the questions in the sustainable procurement standards. And the GBTA is publishing them now before the release of the RFP catalog to give both buyers and suppliers some time to prepare for the new questions, to promote harmonization, to have conversations between suppliers and buyers as well. But to clarify, the questions are not yet available in the major RFP technologies yet, and they will be in the coming years. And so if that's something that you're, as a buyer, are looking for, I definitely encourage you to have conversations with your RFP provider to determine what is that timeline to be as well. And having these questions ahead of time helps prepare for that when that happens, helps make sure that we can have conversations around alignment and the sustainability assessment tools as well, and build further strategic alignment across our sector too.
So you mentioned the RFP, and I think this is the key question that everyone's probably wondering about. So it's very interesting because, you've got these other verticals, you've got aviation. We're also going to be releasing our standards for car rental in the fall. And those, processes are typically done manually, but obviously, as all buyers know, when it comes to hotels, that process, it's done through RFP technology platforms, and it's typically annual and a very resource intensive process, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. Albena, how is the standards for accommodations different than the other verticals, and how would you use it in the context of the actual RFP?
Well, in the context of the RFP, I will be using them. Definitely select those questions that are relevant for you and for your company goals. The idea, that's why we said the sustainability procurement standards is a library of questions. And those questions you can pick based on the level of maturity that you have, or based on which question could serve the purpose for you getting the knowledge that you need to know about the sustainability profile of the supplier and utilizing it into driving your program forward. So definitely that's the first tip. The second tip will definitely be don't change the questions in terms of how they are formulated. So the wording. Why is that? It basically goes back to what we discussed before, the harmonization. It has been put a lot of effort across the entire industry where we develop those standards, and we have been extremely mindful to make sure that we have harmonized questions across different standard setters. to make sure that really the questions that we come up with are the best of the best, basically, and they can provide a good educational tool for you, but also that shrink dramatically the time and effort that suppliers are using into responding those questions. Because think of a scenario where suppliers are receiving so many different RFPs and versions of questions. This takes enormous amount of time and effort. If the questions are the same, but still selected based on your preference and your needs, then this will definitely help you have more meaningful conversation and get more out of it. If you are a company that use a technology provider for running your RFPs, there you will need to have a little bit more patience. GBTA is doing their utmost to harmonize across those providers as well and make sure that they incorporate the questions and the standards into the tools. But as you can imagine, this takes time. It's technology. So be patient there. Use, again, those questions that make sense to you. And how they are different. You asked me at the beginning from other verticals. One of the elements that differentiates the accommodation compared to the other verticals is that in the accommodation space, we have quite a lot of different standard setters, from Sustainability Hospitality Alliance, GSTC, Travel List, and et cetera, where there are already in the market, there have been different versions of sustainability questions proposals to those. But what we really have tried to do is harmonize across all of them. So we have factored all those inputs and enriched it even further to make sure that we really have both the planet and the people aspect of it in those questions.
So you asked our audience to be patient, and I want to go back to that because I'm sure everyone, with the RFP season coming up, is very eager to start using these questions. Albena, what's your recommendation to buyers for this RFP season? I mean, should buyers start adding these as user-defined questions in the RFP while they wait for the technology to update?
Well, if you're using an RFP tool that has GBTA's existing RFP questions or other sustainability questions, I definitely don't recommend adding user-defined questions or introducing a manual process at this time. Just again, because this will create a significant burden on suppliers who are also simultaneously preparing to respond to the new standards. We also have to think about that this is so new to the entire industry. So we also have to be respectful and mindful to our colleagues from the other side of the table. And instead, I would suggest and recommend buyers to review the questions with their teams. It could be sustainability teams, it could be procurement within the procurement organization, or any other relevant stakeholder that one may have, and really pick those questions that align best with the sustainability priorities and targets, and then just reduce the number. Just take what you will need, and then also think about what are you going to use the information that you collect for. How are you going to factor it within your decision making? How are you going to use it? And also be super clear and share those thoughts and have a meaningful conversations with your suppliers as well. Because here what we're trying to achieve is definitely not have just another exercise that makes the RFP process even bigger, more cumbersome, and longer. The idea is here really to drive meaningful change and to send a demand signal, but also make sure that whatever information we get from the suppliers, we use it purposefully and really to take decisions based on this information. If we're not going to disregard, if we're not going to, take this into account, then consider whether right now is the time for you to utilize those RFP questions.
Exactly. And it's interesting, when we released the aviation standards, and we had United on the webinar that we shared in March or the beginning of April. And the airlines were saying, we're ready today to respond to these questions. We have our responses already prepared, but it's very different for the hotel space just based on the nature of this and getting property level data. So Townsend, can you talk a little bit to that and how you as a supplier see yourself using the sustainable procurement standards?
I think it's going to be great having them out here because it does help us focus our conversations with our hotels on what our customers are going to be looking for. It gives us that runway to prepare for those questions and make sure that our hotels have the right resources to be able to respond to these questions when they do come through RFPs as well. It also enables us to have more strategic conversations with our key accounts and our biggest customers as well too. And we do have quite a few conversations with those key accounts who are really looking at, well, what can we do more on sustainability? What can we do more together on? And then one question I've gotten from them is, what should you know your industry, you know your space better. What should we be asking you in our RFP? And having the sustainable procurement standards out there now gives us something that we can point to and say, these are the questions. These are the questions as an industry we've aligned around. If we want to be talking about climate change and aligning our impact on climate change, these are the questions that we should be asking and we should be working together on. So it gives us a great tool to have deeper, more strategic conversations with our key accounts, while also helping us prepare our hotels to respond to these questions as well too. And if you think more broadly across the whole travel ecosystem, TMCs, corporate travel booking tools, RFP providers, they all will have the opportunity to align their criteria, scorecards, procurement guidance, RFP questions with these questions as well too. And having these standards out here too will be able to will give us a little bit more concrete discussions around all the different standard setters too. So as we work with the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance and GSTC, having these standards out there makes it so that we can have more concrete discussions around the path forward as well too. So really excited to have them out there and the potential for how it's going to unlock the value, the kind of the shared value that we've got here in our industry.
And one of the things I actually learned when we were developing this resource was actually about the hotel side and their internal technologies that they are using to gather all of the data from their properties, using an internal API or whatever it is, to get that information. And so I just thought that was really interesting, right? So you guys also need your own runway to update the questions in your technologies, get all that information and prepare for the RFP process.
Exactly. It's quite complicated collecting data from thousands of hotels with very different backgrounds, different brands, different staffing levels. But having the standards out there enables us to prepare and to support those hotels and to support our customers.
So let's bring it up, I think, to a little bit of a higher level now. When you both think about the future of business travel with this resource at our disposal, what are you most excited about? And maybe let's start with Albena.
Well, there's a lot of things to be excited about. Personally, I'm very curious to see how the uptake of the sustainable procurement standards will go across regions and countries, what change it will make, and what impact it will have, not only on the big actors in the accommodation space, but also into smaller independent hotels in different property types. Then it will be very interesting for me to see how it goes with implementing those within the RFP tools, and also how those SPCs will evolve. Would they evolve towards a scoring card or any kind of scoring mechanism going forward? Would there be a desire, a need for that, or the industry and the buyers and basically the actors will find a different way to utilize it and find it a new purpose than originally intended? From another perspective, I'm very positive and encouraged because I think this will provide a great educational opportunity on both sides of the table and in our broader respective organizations to advance the sustainability agenda and to see, the things that we as buyers are asking, to what extent they will be factored somehow within the sustainability pipelines that the suppliers are having. So how are they going to respond to it? And the other way around, what can we as buyers learn from what our suppliers are doing and maybe incorporate it in our broader sustainability agenda that goes beyond just travel? And lastly, I think it is an amazing, fantastic first step to have this one-stop shop and to have all the sustainable info across different verticals for the respective suppliers that we have. Per also, if we talk accommodation per property, collected in one place, and then how this will push us on the other side. And I'm sure the suppliers will be also challenging us, which is only good, into factoring more and more sustainability parameters into our decision making. So that goes beyond cost and beyond compliance and those things. So I'm really, really excited. I think it's a fantastic tool and a good first step.
Thank you, Albena. Townsend, what are you excited about?
Very similar to Albena, I'm excited about the potential to really accelerate our impact through the alignment in these standards. It's ultimately that's what we're chasing after, is we want to have more impact. We want to make sure that what we're doing is meaningful, that our investments are helping drive business growth, but they're also helping drive positive impact across the environment and across society as well too. And so by having that stronger alignment, reducing and focusing our efforts in reporting, that means more time to focus on doing and driving change and implementing, and more opportunities for more strategic long-term conversations with our customers too about what we can do together. Because also we know we're not going to achieve these goals all as individuals. This requires collective action. And I believe that these sustainability procurement standards will help drive that collective action necessary to achieve our shared goals.
Thank you so much to the both of you. One thing I've said from the beginning is that a standard is not a standard unless everybody knows about it. And so if you're listening as an audience member, please help us promote this resource. You can look out for the launch of the Sustainable Procurement Standards for Accommodations by following the GBTA Foundation on LinkedIn. You can also, as I mentioned, download the standards for aviation today at gbtafoundation.org/SPS. If you'd like to give us feedback or even officially endorse the standards, you can reach out to us at sustainability@gbta.org. You've been listening to The Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. For more information about GBTA and its work, visit gbta.org. And be sure to rate and review us whenever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thanks for listening.